Hi everyone. Today in this video we're going to talk about building the form for the concrete that's going to be poured so that I can build the oven on top of it, and also I can continue building the barbecue that's going to go over here. The first thing you have to think about is what kind of materials you're going to buy. So I wanted 5 inches of concrete poured. So I got 2x6s, which are really 1.5 by 5.5, which means that these 2x6s are set down 1/2 inch, so that way there's 5 inches remaining, and that's more or less what I have all the way around. And then I use 2x4s to reinforce the base, as you can see as you can see behind me here. Also, what you have to keep in mind is the insides. Okay, it was completely open. If you saw the last video, there was nothing there. I had to create something so that the concrete doesn't fall through. So as you can see in my picture, I created like a tabletop structure almost. It's kind of what it looked like. And I also then used 2x4s by placing smaller pieces of 2x4 on top of the leg, screwing the leg into the 2x4, and then that 2x4 was screwed into that tabletop that I built for this and for what's behind me here. And the idea was doing it that way is that way when it's done, I can just unscrew the screws that are holding the leg in and pull the leg out. I did make a mistake, and I think I'm going to have to cut the legs out. I probably should have shimmed them, and if you're going to do this, shim it 1/2 inch, put something that's thicker underneath that leg. That way you can pull it out, and then the leg, you can tilt it out once you unscrew the screws. I didn't do that, so I think I'm going to have to cut everything. Not a big deal. If I ever do something like this again, I'll know from my mistakes. But now the inside, and you can see in the pictures, I used hardy backer board. You can use several different things. I used hardy backer board. However, I thought about using cement board. The hardy backer board is in 1/2 inch. The 1/2 inch cement board seemed a little weaker, and there's going to be a lot of weight because of this concrete, so I chose the hardy backer board. You can also, if you wish, use plywood. Now, I didn't choose to use plywood because I was worried that the plywood would be a bit of a headache to remove. I hear that it can stick, and I didn't want to be bothered removing anything. So when you're using cement board or hardy backer board, you can just leave it there because it adheres very well to concrete. It's used for tiling. I've used it many times, both of these materials for tiling. It is a perfect surface for concrete to adhere to. So it'll be in there permanently. You remove the legs, you remove all the wood, done. That being said, everything you see built here behind me, I did with screws, especially underneath here, because I don't have a very big opening. So when I start taking this thing apart, I want to unscrew everything so I can remove it. The only thing I'm probably going to have to cut are the legs, but the tabletop, I can probably unscrew it. I used pocket hole screws. You could probably use anything as long as it stays together. Same thing with everything here on the sides, on the mold. Everything is with screws. Now, I use screws for this for another reason. I was by myself. And if you do have someone help you with this, it will cut your time drastically. It took me 2.5 days to do this by myself. And the reason it took me so long, it probably should have taken a day, is because leveling this by yourself is tricky. And so I use screws because I can easily remove a screw, make an adjustment, put the screw back in, rather than with nails where it becomes a bit of a headache. So everything is done with screws. I also reinforced all of the corners with an extra 2x4 that is mounted to one of the posts, one of the beams here, and then again drilled into the 2x4. So I have 4 screws here. 2 screws in this beam, 2 screws in this 2x4. Just a little extra reinforcement. Is it overkill? It probably is, but I had the pieces laying around. Why not? If it opened up on me while they were pouring concrete, I probably would have banged my head against the wall. I also set up these 2x4s. I mounted them sideways on every side where concrete was poured. The purpose of this is to prevent bowing. So with all the weight of the concrete, I did not want this 2x4 to pop out because there's so much weight pulled up against it. So by attaching these 2x4s to all the sides where concrete is poured, and you can see here too, this is a much bigger one, it solved that problem, and now everything is dry here, and it really worked well. So I would definitely recommend it. Don't take a chance. And since I only had 3-inch screws, I actually drilled holes about 1.5 inches in, so that way the 3-inch screws would be fine. I didn't feel like going to the store in the middle of the project for longer screws. Now, talking about reinforcement, you can't build these tops here without properly reinforcing it. There's going to be a lot of weight on this especially, okay? So I used 1/2-inch rebar, and I made a grid pattern roughly 12 inches apart, and you can see in the picture. I also used a mesh wire on top of it. It's the kind of wire they would use for sidewalks and things like that to prevent it from, maybe not so much from cracking, but if it cracks, it won't separate. And that's the whole idea. If there was ever a crack here, at least there won't be a shift, and then everything gets set off. Don't think we'll have that problem. So a little more is better than a little less, I think. Probably didn't need the mesh anyway, but I did it. You know, a lot of people don't use it. I think it's just worth the extra $10. And so as far as that goes, I mean, once the concrete was poured, you know, I didn't pour the concrete. I had someone pour it for me because it was just too much concrete to pour. The reinforcement is about somewhere in the middle of the 5 inches, which is kind of what you want. You want to center it. And I guess now the next thing is to take this off. And in the next video, I'm going to create a stencil out of a large piece of plywood for the shape of my dome, my igloo-shaped Napoleon-style oven. And also the opening, and we're going to get into that in more detail, how I made this stencil. If you like my video, please subscribe. There's a little bell icon there which will send you notifications when I set up a new video. I really would appreciate the support. I'm new to YouTube. No one's really watching me yet, and I hope that'll change one day. So thank you so much for your time. I hope you enjoyed the video.